The 2004 U.S. presidential election was one of the most pivotal in recent history, occurring just 3 years after the devastating 9/11 attacks. The nation was still grappling with the trauma of that day, and concerns about national security dominated the political landscape. President George W. Bush, who was running for re-election, built his campaign around a strong stance on counterterrorism, arguing that his leadership was crucial for keeping America safe. His challenger, Senator John Kerry, offered a contrasting vision, emphasizing the need for change and calling into question Bush's handling of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The election atmosphere was intense, with a sharpened focus on national security and the continuing war on terror, as voters weighed the best path forward in a post-9/11 world. Just 4 days before Americans were set to vote, a videotape featuring Osama bin Laden surfaced, broadcast by Al Jazeera, and quickly picked up by major news networks across the U.S. In this videotape, bin Laden made a stunning appearance, not only taking responsibility for the 9/11 attacks in a more direct manner than before, but also openly criticizing U.S. foreign policy. His tone was self-assured, and he appeared surprisingly healthy, which caught U.S. intelligence by surprise. This message was crafted to taunt the U.S., positioning bin Laden as a confident leader, undeterred by the American military response to 9/11. The timing of the video's release was strategic, sending shockwaves across a nation on the verge of a significant election. The reaction within the U.S. was swift and intense. News channels scrambled to broadcast and analyze the video, leading to a media frenzy that heightened public anxiety. For many Americans, bin Laden's statements felt like a direct mockery of their efforts to bring him to justice, as he seemed unharmed and unafraid. Politically, the video played into President Bush's hands, reinforcing his campaign's focus on the threat of terrorism. It cast national security as the election's defining issue, framing Bush as the protector against threats like bin Laden, which also put pressure on Kerry's campaign to respond to these renewed fears. Public sentiment swayed toward a feeling of vulnerability, as the videotape reminded Americans that, despite their military efforts, bin Laden remained at large. The release of bin Laden's videotape also underscored the challenges faced by U.S. intelligence agencies, particularly the CIA, in capturing the al-Qaeda leader. At the CIA's Virginia headquarters, a dedicated task force had been tirelessly hunting bin Laden, yet progress was stagnating, and leads had grown cold. The agency was still reeling from the missed opportunity to capture bin Laden during the Tora Bora offensive in 2001, a near miss that had allowed him to slip through their grasp. Intelligence relied heavily on detainees and information gathered from other al-Qaeda operatives, but bin Laden's precise location remained elusive. The frustration within the agency was palpable, as the videotape reminded them of the extensive resources they had poured into the hunt with little to show for it. As bin Laden's taunts aired nationwide, the urgency for actionable intelligence intensified, but so did the awareness of the limitations they faced in tracking down the elusive figure. In the years following 9/11, U.S. intelligence agencies ramped up efforts to dismantle al-Qaeda and locate Osama bin Laden. One significant development was the arrest of Mohammed al-Qahtani in 2001. Al-Qahtani, known as the 20th hijacker, was initially detained by U.S. forces, but a failure to recognize his ties to the 9/11 plot led to a lost opportunity to gain actionable intelligence on bin Laden's whereabouts. In the following years, high-profile captures of senior al-Qaeda operatives, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, provided valuable insights into the network's inner workings. However, while these captures exposed critical details about al-Qaeda's operations and plans, they did not yield concrete information on bin Laden's location. Tracking al-Qaeda's extensive network of couriers and affiliates presented additional challenges, as operatives communicated through intricate methods to avoid detection. This complex web of communication and secrecy proved to be one of the most formidable obstacles in the hunt for bin Laden. Among the various individuals linked to bin Laden, one name, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, emerged as particularly significant. Al-Kuwaiti was identified as bin Laden's trusted courier, a critical figure in relaying messages and maintaining bin Laden's communication with the al-Qaeda network. Interrogations of captured al-Qaeda members revealed al-Kuwaiti's importance, although the accounts of his role were often inconsistent, creating a murky picture of his true position within the organization. Despite these uncertainties, the CIA began to narrow its focus on tracking al-Kuwaiti, suspecting that locating him could ultimately lead to bin Laden. This shift in strategy marked a pivotal turn in the intelligence community's approach, as they methodically pieced together al-Kuwaiti's movements and affiliations. Years later, this persistent effort would yield the breakthrough they needed, eventually guiding them to bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad. On Election Day 2004, President George W. Bush emerged victorious, with national security concerns and bin Laden's ominous videotape playing a significant role in shaping voter sentiment. The election result underscored Americans' fear of terrorism and their trust in Bush's promise to keep the nation secure. The immediate post-election period saw an intensified focus on finding bin Laden, as the U.S. government doubled down on efforts to dismantle al-Qaeda and prevent future attacks. Bush's administration launched further initiatives aimed at strengthening counterterrorism operations, signaling that the hunt for bin Laden would remain a top priority. The pursuit of bin Laden continued for years after the 2004 election, with CIA operatives and military forces dedicating extensive resources to track his movements. This relentless effort finally paid off in 2011, when a raid on a fortified compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, led to bin Laden's death. The 2004 videotape release marked a pivotal moment that influenced U.S. counterterrorism policies for nearly a decade, as it underscored the nation's vulnerability and reinforced the need for an unwavering commitment to national security. The raid that ultimately ended bin Laden's life brought a degree of closure to the American public and was seen as a triumph of persistence and resilience in the face of a prolonged struggle against terrorism. The release of bin Laden's 2004 videotape was a watershed moment that reverberated through American politics and the global fight against terrorism. It served as a stark reminder of the ongoing threat posed by al-Qaeda and reinforced the urgency of protecting U.S. interests, both domestically and abroad. The 2004 presidential election, shaped by the backdrop of national security concerns, marked a critical turning point in U.S. history, influencing foreign policy and counterterrorism efforts for years to come. As Americans reflect on the impact of that election and the years-long pursuit of justice for the 9/11 attacks, the legacy of bin Laden's taunt lingers as a reminder of the nation's determination to overcome adversity and protect its people.